The important thing to note is that the location of liberation theology, and this is why there is an anomaly, I think, between the location of liberation theology and the idea of critical Muslim studies. The idea of critical Muslim studies is located in the world of the academy. It's critical Muslim studies. It happens in universities. The location of liberation theology, it is an anomaly. It is a contradiction for liberation theology to be located inside the academy. It is located in the struggles of ordinary people for different forms of liberation and from different forms of oppression. Liberation theology is, it happens post hoc. Your theorizing of liberation, it happens after your engagement inside a struggle. If I can just quickly narrate a personal example of this. My first major book that I wrote was called Quran, Liberation and Pluralism. And it was a reflection on some of the difficult questions that emerged inside the South African liberation struggle on the question of working with non-Muslims. And how do you deal with all this Quranic text that says you should not work with Muslims? And in the midst of this crucible, the struggle against apartheid, there was inevitable interreligious solidarity of people against apartheid. But there were these texts that we had to grapple with. During the struggle, there were times when I was on the run. I couldn't surface in public because, the police were all over looking for me. And during those quiet times, I started reflecting on that. When the struggle kind of only formally came to an end, the unbanning of the ANC, the release of Nelson Mandela and so on, then I had time to reflect theologically on all of this and how now did those Quranic texts speak to us in the middle of this crucible, this struggle against apartheid. And then this work was produced, which arguably is the seminal text on Islamic liberation theology. Then I started thinking about other forms of marginality that I was encountering. I was hearing these stories about people who are infected with a sexually transmitted disease, HIV. And I was curious, what does Islam have to say about sexually transmitted diseases? So I started working with two research assistants of mine. Let's explore the question about Islam and sexually transmitted diseases, okay? But let's also figure out and find some people who are living with this. And then after a while, we realized that, wait, man, you don't write about sexually transmitted diseases in Islam without actually working with and encountering real people who had been ostracized and marginalized by their communities and who are living on the edges of societies. I don't know if any of you have ever dealt with a body that had died of AIDS, but it's literally just flesh and bones, nothing more to it. And sometimes these people had been so ostracized that their families had completely rejected them, and they ended up in Christian homes or hospices. And the family gets contacted when the body is dead and the body had already been cremated, and here a Muslim family gets handed a box of ashes. What do I do with this box of ashes? Can you imagine? And the family sometimes, I'm sorry, I can't take this. I don't know what to do with it. And the families walked away. So now, do you first get engaged in the issues of stigmatization, in the issues of life and death, the issues of marginalization of these people, and work with people, empower them, find different ways of relating to their isolation on the margin, and then you reflect on it, or do you now start writing a book before that? Now, the problem with theory, with much of theory in critical Muslim studies, is that it is theory, and it is dislocated from the ordinary struggles of the believers. And so in some ways there is a major problem about a liberation theology that is also located in the academy and that is primarily connected to the idea of studies, including the idea of critical Muslim studies.